Hi everyone, my name is Rochelle and this is my channel. I am going to go and do an April monthly wrap-up of all the books that I read throughout the month of April. I read a total of 10 books, so just imagine 2 more fingers than what I have currently. But I read 10 books for the month of April. Some of them were e-arcs and some of them were actually physical books. I did not get to all the books that I had on my TBR list that I hoped to get through. I got so close. I really tried. I really tried. But I think 10 is still a very great number. So with that being said, let's dive into all the books that I read for the month of April.
Lazy Sunday mornings hiding.
So first up is How Can I Trust You? And this was originally the name of the book when I got it as an ARC for my Kindle from NetGalley, but it has later been changed to The Perfect Marriage. This book is by AJ Campbell, so I listened to it through audio. I actually rated this book around a 3.5 for stars. I did really enjoy the book at the beginning. However, towards the end, I just really started to lose interest in the last hour. The main character, Ashley, felt very wishy-washy. So with this story, it centers around Ashley and her husband, Daniel, and they are going to their next door neighbor slash friend's house, who is Lucy. So one of the things that I got really confused with this story is that when you read the cover, it makes it seem like the husband killed her best friend, so the wife's best friend, but that's not the case. It's actually Daniel who's best friends with Lucy. And that was the most confusing part. That was really difficult for me to wrap my head around. But yeah, so Ashley and Daniel, they take their son over to Lucy's house. Lucy's kiddo is having a birthday party, and somewhere in the matter of all the birthday things happening, Lucy is murdered, and Daniel is hovering over her body with an item that they assume is the murder weapon. And so throughout this entire story, you're kind of seeing like everyone trying to figure out and piece things together. Did Daniel do this? Did he not do this? Him trying to communicate with his wife slash not communicating with his wife. And then, like I said, Ashley going back and forth whether or not she actually does love her husband or can trust him, yada, yada, yada. This book was good, but like I said, I'm not a fan of wishy-washy characters, so that is why I rated it at 3.5 stars. Next one was One by One by Freida McFadden. This was my first ever Freida McFadden book, and I was very excited for it. I was so excited for the fact that I got accepted to read it through NetGalley, and so I had it as an e-arc through my Kindle. And with this one, I rated it a 4.7 stars. So Claire and her husband Noah, they are college sweethearts, and they're kind of having a rough patch in their marriage. Claire is constantly wondering, okay, is there going to be a breaking point for their marriage to end? Is she going to be able to stick it out with her husband until their kids graduate? And that's kind of her goal, but at the same time, just the conversations that they have back and forth with how Noah talks to her, she's constantly wondering, okay, I don't think I can go and do this anymore. Well, they end up going and taking a trip with their friends. They're basically doing a road trip to get to this hotel in the woods in Colorado. And throughout the process of going to the hotel, they hit a lot of difficulties. There's issues with the car. Suddenly their map seems to be leading them in the wrong directions. Their compass isn't working the way it should. And then suddenly each one of the people in the group is getting taken away or offed, and they can't find any signs of the person's body. So throughout the story, you're kind of wondering, all right, is it someone in the group? Is it a creature? There's claws on the tree. Is that what this is? So I really enjoyed this book. It was very fast paced, and I found myself just constantly being so enraptured in the story and wanting to get to the next chapter, and then realizing, oh, there's something new that was brought up. I need to get to the next chapter. There are 2 different main characters of the story that you get to have the points of view. One is Claire, and then the other is Anonymous. And so Anonymous, you're kind of getting to see a little bit of backstory and trying to piece it together, wondering, all right, what happened to this person? What's going on here? So overall, long spiel done. I really did enjoy this book. It was Very good. I loved it, and I'm excited to continue reading more books by Freida McFadden. The next one is The Baby by AJ McDine, and with this one I rated it a 4.2 stars. I did listen to it through audio, and let me go and also say this also was another book that I got through NetGalley. I had so many arcs that I needed to read for this month, and I just had to like plow through them, but also try to read some other books that were on my list to get through. So with this one, it was audio. I did listen to it while I was working. I found it to be a very interesting read. However, I need to go and say that there are some trigger warnings for this book. So there is alcoholism, pregnancy, and child loss. There is also rape, and rape kind of shows up a little bit more towards the middle to end of the book. It's not mentioned too much, but I still feel like it should be a trigger. So definitely go and check those out before you go and read this book yourself. So with this one, it revolves around Lucy and Miles. Lucy has always had the idea of the type of family she'd like to have. She's always known that she wanted to be a mother. However, when she marries Miles, she soon discovers that he does not want to be a father. It just kind of goes back and forth with this. She wants to have kids, but her husband's not really for it. And some things tend to work out, but also don't. And that kind of spirals Lucy into this series of using alcohol as a crutch. And one morning when she wakes up, she realizes that there is a baby that is in her house, and she doesn't know who the baby belongs to. And so she's conflicted, wondering, did she steal this baby? Because she has a hangover. She doesn't know what happened. Or is this the universe saying you were always meant to be a mother? So while Lucy is trying to piece together these things, she's also realizing she has a baby that she needs to take care of and make sure that she can get the baby to the right home and make sure that the mother is not missing her child. So throughout all of this, Lucy is kind of looking at pieces of her past, trying to get an understanding of how things led up to where they are now, what happened that night when she ended up over drinking, and how could this baby have possibly ended up in her house. But also, what is her husband gonna do? So there's a lot of big questions that kind of go through your head while you're reading this book. And there were a lot of things that popped up towards the end that really shocked me. Like a lot of things that really, really shocked me. And I don't know if it's just because I'm out of, practice with reading books, but I have been getting shocked by quite a few of the books that I've been reading lately, and I'm not upset about it. I really, really love that. All right, so the next one, another arc, it's To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang, and this one I originally rated 4 stars. However, I am kind of conflicted if I want to keep it at 4 stars or change my review. I'm not usually the type of person that goes back on my review, but after reading some other reviews through Goodreads, I am kind of wondering if I didn't evaluate this book properly, because it is written by a BIPOC author. It has BIPOC representation. However, with the story, I guess there are certain things that I wasn't quite sure of. So when you watch my April vlog, you will see that I was kind of uncertain whether or not this book was a romance, and it seems like it has been confirmed in different spaces that it is an enemies to lovers. And the reason why that's very conflictive is, so the main character, Ruhi, is gifted with this power of death. And she's always viewed it as a curse and has never wanted to use it, except one time where it was completely by accident. So ever since that happened, she's been kind of like hiding in the shadows, trying to not make herself be seen, because Rome has invaded her homeland. And basically anyone that has these really special powers, they end up going and disappearing. So she's trying to make sure that she stays under the radar, but still provide for her grandma and her sister. And while she's going and doing that, she is also trying to help with her sister's drug addiction, which was brought in by the Romans. So there's just all these different things that are kind of going together. And by this unfortunate event, Ruhi basically catches the eye of one of the Roman princes, whose name is Antony. And he basically goes and recruits her with the promise that he will go and protect her family if she agrees to be an assassin for him. And the reason he wants an assassin is that he is telling her that it is his goal to save his world and also her world, and maintain the culture of both and not have them destroy each other. So Ruhi is very conflicted because her entire life she's absolutely hated these Romans that have come into her homeland and changed all the things about their culture and just trying to erase a lot of the things that make them who they are. But as the story progresses, you're kind of seeing these things where you're wondering, is Ruhi getting feelings for Antony? And so that's where the conflicting piece falls, is that a lot of people are saying this is a colonialization romance. I think I'm saying that correctly. And with me, I guess I wasn't quite sure if that was something that was meant to happen in the story. And I'm trying to say this too without putting too many spoilers in there or going on the line of being spoilery. But it has been confirmed that I guess the love interest for Ruhi is actually Antony. So with that being said, especially all the things that he and his people did to them, it's kind of like borderline Pocahontas and John Smith, just for a lack of better examples. So think of the Disney movie type of thing. So yeah, I'm a little unsure if I want to keep it at the 4-star rating, because it is great, BIPOC author representation, all of that stuff, but yeah, there's some icky pieces in there. So moving on to the next one. So the next book was Voices in the Snow by Darcy Coates. This was my first ever Darcy Coates book, and it was a little bit of a chonky boy. And let me just say, I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. So I originally was going to go and rate this book 5 stars, and because of a piece that I misread, I actually rated it 4.75 stars, and I'll explain that in a second. So basically in this book, Claire is going and traveling to pick up her aunt so that they can go back over to her sister's place and basically stay in the bunker her sister has while this apocalypse type thing is happening to the world. No one really knows what's going on, but they are seeing these places basically go black, and no one is able to get in touch with anyone that is in one of these dead zones. So Claire is on her way to go and pick up her aunt. It is only her aunt, and her sister that are her remaining family. So they're trying to stay together while this is going on. However, while she's driving to her aunt's house, there is this random snowstorm that comes out of nowhere, and she is trying her hardest to get to her aunt's place while also being on the phone with her sister. She basically gets to this place on the drive where she gets into this forest, and it provides a little bit of some relief from the snow, but she kind of loses contact with her sister, and then that's kind of where everything goes black. She suddenly wakes up in this strange house that she doesn't recognize anything for. It basically has like a very historic look to it, and she doesn't recognize any of the things that she's seeing in her surroundings. But she does see that there's this random guy that's over in the corner by the fireplace. Once she kind of gets a little bit more of an awareness of what's going on, she realizes that she's really badly injured. And all that can go through her mind is, was it this guy that did this? Where is she? She needs to get out of here. And that is probably where I'm going to kind of leave it, because if I go too much into depth, it will kind of spoil the story. I will say though, while Claire is in this house, she is constantly wondering if these figures she is seeing are a figment of her imagination or if they're actually real. And now I'm going to get into the part that I basically lowered from a 5-star rating. So with one of these figures, the way it was described, it made it sound like the creature had 8 fingers in total. And as you know, I have 4 fingers on each hand. And when I read that, I immediately was brought back to The Witches with Anne Hathaway and how ectrodactyly was brought into a horrible light where, you know, basically if you have a limb difference, you're a villain. So I was kind of dealing with my own feelings on that and just a little bit of betrayal because I really loved this book. And then when I got to that moment, I was like, really? So I did take a picture of it and I read it again the next day and I realized that I had misread things. And one of the creatures, with how they were described, they had 8 fingers on both hands. So I felt really bad that I misread that, but at that point I already had the feelings that I did and it was really hard for me to erase it, so I couldn't get back up to a 5-star rating. Needless to say, I really, really loved this book. It is actually a series. There are 4 books in total, and I probably will be reading them for my May TBR, so keep that in mind. Sorry it was a long spiel about this book, but I really loved it. I will say, go into this book with as little of an idea as possible for what it's about, aside from obviously what's on the back of the book, because that was what kept me so enticed in the storyline. I really loved it. It was kind of like a mixture of The Day After Tomorrow, 10 Cloverfield Lane, The Walking Dead, and The Mist. So just a combination of all of those shows and movies that I have really enjoyed watching. So if any of those are something that you enjoy, definitely pick up this book. So next one was one that I was actually really excited for. I loved the cover of this book. I thought it was so beautiful. It's a letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Cathrall, and the book looked so beautiful. I was very excited when I got approved for the arc on NetGalley, but unfortunately this was a DNF for me. I don't usually have books that I don't finish. I'll usually try to push through to the end, as difficult as it might be, but I only got to 8% of the way through this book. It was so difficult for me to continue reading. I think part of it was the writing style. So basically with this book, it's going between 2 different groups of people and they're writing letters to each other. And it's all in scientific words and formatting, very scholastic. And I kind of lost interest really quickly. It was also really difficult for me to keep track of which characters were talking to who. And I think part of the reason for that was that all of the characters were kind of written with the same tone, or their letters were written in the same tone. So I was constantly flipping back and forth through my Kindle to figure out, okay, who's writing this letter? Who's this letter to? Who are they talking about? And because of that, I couldn't stay interested. It was just really hard for me. So unfortunately, with that being said, it was not a book that was for me. However, it could be a book for you. So just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. So next we will go to The Last Girl Left by A.M. Strong. I listened to this one through an audiobook and it was also a 4-star read for me. And this one also does have a trigger warning. There is a lot of mentions of rape and some descriptors in it. And if that is not something that you are able to read and is very difficult for you, please keep that in mind. So basically with the story, it starts out with, you know that the main character, Tessa, is a lone survivor of a really brutal attack. She was on a trip with her friends when they were in college, and all of her friends were killed and raped by this one person who is no longer alive in the story. And Tessa, she was also raped and attacked. However, she was not killed, and she is constantly wondering why that was. Why was she the one that ends up living while her friends did not get that chance? So she is obviously dealing with a lot, and because of this, she lives with her sister. She does not hold a job. She's kind of a recluse and doesn't really go out of the house much. And she does have a therapist, but her therapists don't last very long. So after a very paranoid moment, her sister gives her an ultimatum of saying, you can no longer live in this house. and you need to get your life together. I've tried to help you, nothing is working, you're not helping yourself, you gotta leave. So Tessa is obviously feeling very hurt and scared by this, but she realizes, no, her sister's right, she does need to do something. But instead of maybe doing something a little bit more low-key, she decides to go big. And so she contacts an editor that had tried to get in touch with her soon after the event happened, but she turned him down. Well, now she's reaching out to him and saying, I will tell you my story if you pay me. And through a little bit of back and forth, basically the contract is revealed that in order for this book deal to happen, she needs to go to this island and stay in that house, which I guess I should turn around and mention. She is using her sister's credit card to pay for this place, which is also part of the reason why her sister's like, you need to leave, you need to get out. So she's working with this editor at this book company, and they've agreed that they will go and pay her a substantial amount of money if she stays in this house and talks about basically surviving and healing from what happened in this place. Well, Tessa gets there, and there's a lot of situations of her trying to adjust to living in this house, going and facing a lot of these horrible memories that she has, and also moments where she's wondering, is there a ghost in this house or is someone messing with her? So there's a lot of these things going on. It is a very difficult book to get through. It was good, but like I said, very difficult, very hard subjects. So I think I said I rated this book a 4 stars. It was good, but the triggers. So next one is The Good Ones Are Taken. This one was actually one of the few romance books that I read that I actually knew was a romance book, and this one was by Taj McCoy, and I rated it 4.8 stars. I really did love this book. It centers around Maggie, who got out of a very serious relationship, and her friends basically say, you need to get back into the dating world. You're a maid of honor. She's a maid of honor for 2 of her friends. And they're like, you need to have a date to the wedding. So with that being said, they basically create a dating profile for her, and she's like, okay, I'll go through with it. But she also has these non-date dates that she has with her friend Garrett, who she had some feelings for in college, but because of their friendship, she was like, no, this can't happen. So while she's going through some of these awful dates, she's also getting to see these pieces of Garrett that she just really likes and wishes that she could actually find in a partner. And so I'll leave it there with that. I really did like this book. There was a lot of conversations revolving around food, and I don't know if that was because it was located in LA, which has so many good places to go to eat, but just the food descriptions, if you are hungry or if you do not want to get hungry before you're going to bed, do not read this book while you're trying to sleep or before you go to sleep, because there were so many times I wound up hungry. The only reason why this book was not a 5-star rating for me was because of the spice. I'm typically the kind of person that prefers more closed doors when it comes to romance and spiciness. I'm not the type of person that will usually read a very spicy book or even erotic books. Those just really aren't my type. So there were a few spicy moments throughout the book and just weren't really for me. So because of that, I had to rate it a 4.8 stars, but it was really good. Just the friendship groups, the food, the strong, confident Black woman. I mean, there are just so many things about this book that I loved, and I really do want to see what else the author has written. So we'll see if there's any more in the future for me. So we just have a few more left, so stick with me. So the next one is His Last Wife by Ruhi Choudhary, and I listened to this one through audio, and I did rate it 4.5 stars. Since I listened to this through audio, there were 2 different narrators, and I did think that that made a lot of sense, especially for the different characters that were being voiced. However, there were some times that the other narrator had different voices for some of the characters that you were already listening to, and I kind of wish, just with a nitpicky piece of me, that both narrators kind of either listened or talked to each other about the voices they had in mind for some of these characters, because at points they were so different, just in the tone and the pitch, that it threw me off a little bit and took me out of the story, because I kind of forgot which characters were being mentioned because of that. So taking that aside, the story centers around Anna, who is working, and she constantly looks forward to the day that one of the patients, Carrie, comes into the office. She finds him very attractive, but knows that he has lost his wife and is dealing with a lot of grief. So when they have a friendship that ends up coming up, and then soon a little bit of a romance, she is very excited, but also concerned because of the things that she knows about his wife. She also falls deeply in love with his daughter, Harper, and although she's uncertain about their relationship and some of the pieces of his wife, she knows that she loves Harper and she loves this child. So when they end up going and moving into Carrie's house, she's dealing with a lot of things. The neighbors that know about Carrie's wife, and Carrie's wife's mother, who is also living in the house with him, or with them. So there's a lot of pieces there, and you definitely end up going and developing a lot of sympathy for Anna, and lots of questions end up going and arising that make you wonder who you're necessarily rooting for. And then there's a twist that does pop up, and all I can say is wow. And I have to leave it there because I'm afraid if I continue talking about it, I might bring up spoilers, and I don't want to do any sort of spoilers. I want to kind of tell you the general theme of the book, some things that pop out, little stuff like that, but nothing that goes on the spoiler territory area. So I'm leaving it there, but it was really good. So next one is Broken by Imogen Keeper, and this is a part of the After the Plague series. This one was a pretty quick read, and I actually don't have a star rating for this book. And I don't know if it's because, of how short it was and not really getting a chance to fully connect or get a feel of the characters. But I just feel like if I were to pick a rating for this book, it wouldn't be fair. So because of that, I am not giving it a star rating. I did enjoy it. I do want to continue reading the series and getting a better understanding of the characters, what's going on. But yeah, there is no rating for this book for me. You get to go and see two different points of view. One is Frankie and the other is York. Frankie is an artist that lives at home with her husband, and York was in the military. And basically this story, from what I understand, was written during COVID and quarantine. And so there's a few mentions of COVID in the book series. However, nothing happens during that piece. There's actually another sickness that ends up coming after and kind of wiping out a lot of people. And no one has a full understanding of how to protect themselves, what's going on, and trying to survive, but also kind of leaving. So there are some similarities to what we experienced during the dreaded quarantine and trying to protect ourselves, trying to know how to go out in public, but not catch what was going on. So there are some pieces with that. I feel like since we're not in quarantine anymore, but are still, trying to be cautious and careful, I was at a point where I was okay reading this book. But if you're still in the uncertain areas of all the things that have happened in the past couple of years, maybe it isn't the right time for you to pick up this book. But I did like it. It was cute. I need to read more to fully get a feel of where I want to rate this book. All right, and last book from my TBR was The North Tower by Michelle N. Hagood, and I rated this one 4 stars. I actually picked up this book when my fiance and I went to the bookstore, and she was actually there signing books. And I did start this at the beginning of March, but I guess I kind of fell out because I just wasn't in the mood to fully read it. but through a lot of stubbornness on my end, I pushed through it, and I'm very glad that I did. I really loved this book. The magic system that Michelle wrote and the world that she created, it was very interesting, and just how she wrote, you really fell in love with the character Charlie. So in this story, Charlie is found as a child in a trash can. She was abandoned by her parents, and she has gone her whole life in different foster systems, but also having this weird thing that happens to her where she unleashes this energy that does a lot of chaos in its wake. And she's never understood what exactly has caused this, what is wrong with her, but just knows that she has to be careful. So when her friend ends up going and giving her an opportunity to leave and basically start a new life, she finally decides that she's going to take it. But this unfortunate accident happens, and because of it, she is suddenly in this magic school where she is told that she is a royal and her dad is one of the most powerful magic users. And so in this story, there's basically different types of magic users. I'm trying to remember because I did finish it last week. So there's basically royals, which are at the top, and Royal 9, I believe, is the most powerful. And then there is common, and then something that starts with a D that I can't remember the name of, and then regulars. So that's kind of the magic system, and then there's ranks for it. So because Charlie is a Royal 9, the headmaster there wants to have her stay to help them with this war against her dad, because he feels like she will be what they need to win this war. And of course, Charlie is uncertain. She doesn't know her dad. She's just learning this piece about the fact that she does have a dad. All she can think of is like, she needs to leave. She needs to get away from here. Basically, the headmaster says like, if she can become a temporary student just for the time being so that they can teach her how to control her powers, he will consider taking her back to her regular life and to her friend. There are different people in the story that have the title of master before their names. And basically these people, they go through this extensive training with their magic, and through this extensive training, they get the title of master before their names. So there's this one character, Master Kale, who is basically teaching Charlie how to handle her magic and her powers. And he's a jerk. I'm sorry, he is a jerk. I'm not quite sure what his deal is. Maybe it will get explained at some point. But yeah, so he's basically left to go and teach her how to use her magic and how to control things. All the while, Charlie is trying to figure out how the heck she can get out of this school, back to her life. And she's trying to learn how to port, which is basically their form of teleportation. So she's trying to learn that. She discovers that there's this mystery about the school, and she's not quite sure if she can fully trust these people that brought her to this magic school. So she kind of goes back and forth with whether or not she should actually develop any sort of anchors and establish friendships with students that are also going to the school, because she wants to get a better understanding of some of these mysteries that have been brought forth. I will also go and say that with this book, there are some similarities to magic systems that I've really enjoyed in the past in other series I've liked. I have read some other reviews where some people have compared this book series or this book to a series by an author who I will not mention, who shall not be named. So if you did really like aspects of that book series growing up and everything, I think that this would be a great replacement. It is a trilogy. The second book is out. It came out at the beginning of April. And although, like, you know, this is an entirely different book, entirely different world, there are some pieces that you might enjoy in it if you did enjoy that book series. And best of all, none of that ickiness. That's enough that I'll go and mention there. Those are all the books that I read for the month of April. I read 10 books, which I think is great. However, I'm still a little bit bummed that I didn't get through my entire TBR for the month. There were just so many arcs that I needed to get through and just not enough time. So some of those might be moved over through the month of May, and we might get to see repeats of those as I try to finish them. But yeah, all of these books were really good. I hope that you found some books interesting or learned about some books that maybe you want to go and add to your own list. And yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna probably hop out because I felt my tummy going grumbling. I felt my tummy grumble a few times and I'm getting a little bit hungry. So yeah, I'm gonna go and say goodbye. Remember that you are worthy and capable of doing amazing things, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon. Bye. So with that being said, let's go and dive into all the books that I read for the month of March, or April. I don't know if I've been saying March this whole time. Those are all the books that I read for the month of April. Yeah.
Undercovers, I don't mind staying in with you. Play your favorite movie, laying right beside me. I don't mind when it's just us two.